Welcome to the Today Counts show. Today does count because it impacts, it influences your tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. The Today Counts podcast is sponsored by the generous donors of the Lead Today community. I'm your host, Tim Piper. There are two very popular verses in the Bible, more specifically in the Old Testament, more specifically than that, the book of Proverbs. More specifically than that, chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 reads this way: Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, and in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will guide you on the right paths. To say that I was raised in a Christian home is an understatement. Not only would you find us in church every Sunday, almost every Sunday. I don't know why we wouldn't be there. I cannot remember missing them, but I would say almost every Sunday, and not just every Sunday morning for services and Sunday school, but also Sunday evening services and midweek Wednesday evening services. Also, we would be involved in any other extracurricular activity. You probably have not heard of Boys Brigade, but it's somewhat like Boy Scouts. And we had an extension of the church that did that, and I was part of that. On top of that, I went to a Christian school through elementary school and through middle school, or what some call junior high, all but 1 year. I went to a public high school, but for those years, those formative years, I went to a Christian school. I was exposed to Christian scripture, the Bible. On top of that, my mom and dad practiced reinforcing the ideas of Christianity, the story of the Bible, and Scripture itself, to the point that I remember being in a speech club or a speech contest where I would memorize a story in the Bible, or maybe it would be like rewritten into story form. I would memorize that and give that as a speech in competition. I remember that in some of these clubs and activities, memorizing scripture was part of what you did. You were rewarded with, little gold stars on your next to your name on a chart in your Sunday school class. But even as I got older into middle school and high school, my mother was very concerned about my spiritual health, and she would encourage me to read scripture. She even went to the extent of paying me as a teenager to read scripture. Now, reading has always come easy to me, and so that was like cash in the bank. That was like easy money. So, she changed the rules, and I would have to write out, a paragraph or so for each chapter that I had read to explain what it is that I just got done reading. Of course, comprehension is a whole different level than just reading, right? In fact, a lot of our tests in school deal with comprehension. But, whether I really appreciated it at the time, I'm not sure. But I will tell you this: I have come to appreciate in an extreme level that I don't even have the vocabulary to tell you. But Scripture has permeated my personhood, has reached even now into my 60s, and is a very, very important part of my life. In fact, if I have any increasing spiritual goals, it has to do with memorizing more Scripture, not less Scripture, because of the power that I receive in doing that, the strength that I receive in doing that. Now, I'm going somewhere with this. Now, when I quote it, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, and I can quote it different ways in different versions, but again, just to say it again to you that are listening, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Well, to say trust in the Lord, one has to assume that they believe in a Lord. And of course, the Lord that we're referring to is the Creator, to God, our source of life. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. When the Bible uses terms like heart and mind and soul, it's usually referring to the whole person. So trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In other words, what you see and what you feel, because there's more than what you see and what you feel. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. And in all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your ways. He will direct your path. He will give you direction. It's a general principle. It's a general promise. It's a general truth that comes from the wisdom literature found in the Old Testament. Now, why did I pick out that verse? Because, there is a lot of us today that we're probably not doing that very well. Let me just say it this way. There's a lot of us, and I would include myself in the circle, even in doing my work of coaching, advising, teaching, all the things that I do in our organization. There are times where I know for a fact that I am living and leading on adrenaline. Stephen Covey would call that quadrant one, that everything seems to be important and everything seems to be urgent, and it increases your stress, it increases your anxiety. It basically leads you to a place where you're operating with an empty emotional tank. Now, have you ever noticed that when you are empty, when you're empty emotionally, I want you to think about that for a minute. When you are empty emotionally, which is one of the most difficult gauges to keep track of. It's one of the most difficult things to get our arms around, our brain around. But when we are struggling emotionally, when we are not well rested, when we are not mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, here's some of the symptoms. I wrote down just a bunch of them. You're offended easily and often. You go somewhere, and whether it's in traffic or at the grocery store, at home, at work, it's just like, you got a hair trigger. You're just easily offended, and you're often offended. When you're emotionally empty, you're like driven unconsciously. You're driven to be right versus seeking to really understand what's going on. Once again, you have that hair trigger. You're short with those that are closest to you. You're snappy, right? You're holding grudges. You're making excuses for not engaging in relationships or activities or places because you're holding grudges, because you're easily offended. You're literally running from one thing to another or from one place to another. You just go. And you're making mistakes, frankly. You're making stupid mistakes. I'll never forget the time where I ran into one of my own cars in the driveway when I was a young man. I think I was in my early 30s. And I was going. I pulled my truck out and backed into my wife's car. It's just stupid stuff. You just do stupid stuff when you are always in a hurry. You make a ton of mistakes. And then, of course, that makes everything harder. That makes work harder. It makes being effective more difficult. All kinds of stuff. I made a mistake yesterday, to be frank. And in that case, it wasn't because I was in a hurry or stress. I was just flat out too confident. And I didn't check one more thing, which would have saved me from, more work that I had to do, today to make up for what I did yesterday. But we just end up doing a lot of mistakes, making a lot of mistakes when we're emotionally dead, when we're emotionally empty. Also, when you're emotionally drained, but you've got a good sense of self-control, you are internally protesting instead of externally. So you're stuffing stuff, right? And you're boiling over. You're like a tea kettle, right? And just you can start to hear the whistle come out of it. When people ask how you're doing, you say busy, busy, busy. Busy. You try to put a smile on your face, but it's not there. You're not happy. Your thoughts toward others lean towards the negative instead of giving them the benefit of the doubt, instead of looking at them in the positive. When you inventory your me time habits, they are more destructive than life-giving. In other words, when you finally have time for yourself, You're choosing quick fixes, right? You're laying on the couch, watching show after show after show. You're eating crappy. You're drinking too much. You're just doing the things that are self-destructive versus giving you new life and giving you rest. That's another symptom. Instead of having an attitude of serving, you're embracing this must, this sense of obligation. You're embracing a victim mentality. You feel like you're being used, right? These are all the attitudes that are kind of draining from your mind into your heart, or from your emotions into your heart. You've lost the ability to love yourself. You don't even know how to laugh at yourself anymore when you make mistakes. You don't have tolerance for other people because you don't have any tolerance for yourself. And when you take the time to really think about it, you're just flat angry. I don't know what you're doing right now. I don't know if you're driving. I don't know if you're running on the treadmill. I don't know if you're cleaning house. I don't know what you're doing right now. But if you think about it, you're just frustrated and you're angry. You're at your wit's end. So, as we say, you've also have become that unsafe person. You've become that unsafe place where other people can come up and talk to you about difficult things because you don't want to hear it and you don't want to deal with it. You have no tolerance whatsoever, right? You're redlining, as I call it. Here's some more. I've got more, right? Some of these have got to be landing if at all you've been running on adrenaline hard and fast. You're being tempted to do things you will regret. You're actually thinking about doing things that in the end you will regret. Telling somebody off, doing something stupid. Here's another one. You're taking shortcuts. You've been going so hard that you're taking shortcuts. You've made it clear that you no longer like your job. You no longer like your spouse. You are worrying about this or that almost every day, constantly. You are now feeling insecure, unsafe, and threatened. And frankly, you have a very, very difficult time simply being present. Simply being present. So let me come back to this scripture. I'm not preaching at you. I'm not yelling at you. I'm with you. I'm with you. I can get, that's a big list, right? Hopefully we're not all of those things at the same time, but one seems to give birth to another, doesn't it? That's the way it works. Kind of like rabbits. They just continue to grow. I'm going to read to you this time instead of quote it, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, and then talk about, the how, right? In my Bible, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding. Think about him in all your ways, and he will guide you on the right paths. I don't know about you, but just reading that verse, I'm going to read it again. It calms me down. It slows me down. It causes me to be more pensive, to ponder, to think, to be still, and maybe to be conscious about even my breathing. Trust. The verse starts off with trust. What is trust? Trust isn't a theory. Trust isn't a pledge. Trust isn't religious. Trust is an action. When you trust the chair or the love seat or the sofa that you are about to sit on or your desk chair, then you throw your weight unto it and you trust that it is going to hold you. So there's an action here. Trusting God is an action. And he gives us some instruction, and I'm going to get even more practical. We're being abstract here with some ideology, which is all good. But so we want to throw our weight into God, all of us, our doubts. So you can't trust God without also giving him your junk. You can't just, give him your good stuff. You got to give him your doubts and your junk and all those things that I mentioned before. Whatever is true for you, you literally got to give those to him. You can literally say, God, I give you my doubts. I give you my anger. I give you my weariness. I give you my frustration. I give you my insecurity. I give you my, right? You can go on and on and on. And you literally like taking it out of your briefcase. Not that we carry those around anymore, but your backpack or whatever, you just pull those things out one by one and you start giving them to you. I know this is still abstract, but I'll get to some more detail in a minute. So trust in the Lord with all your heart, everything, right? You got to throw everything at him, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The worst case scenario, you got to throw it at him. And do not rely on your own understanding. In other words, you got to get out of your own head. You got to get out of your own head, because when you're in your own head, it's like a corn maze. It just seems like there's no way out. You're just going round and round and round and round. And it says, think about him in all your ways. Well, what does it mean, think about him in all your ways? Well, when's the last time you really thought about it? If you do believe in God, how great must God be? How big must he be? I mean, Scripture teaches us that God is spirit. He is spirit. Teaches us that he's omniscient, meaning he's all knowing, that he's omnipotent, that he's all powerful, that he's omnipresent. He is everywhere, all at the same time. And you've probably heard me say in the past that, in other words, I believe as vast as God is, he is big enough to be small enough to care about me, to care about you at the same time. And right now, as I'm recording this, there is a war going on in the Middle East. And while that war is going on, and he can be with every individual in that war if he were invited to be, so at the same time can he be with you and I. He's big enough to be small enough to care about him. When you start thinking about how big God is, and if you know about his promises, and that's why Scripture is so important to me, if you were to die today and you don't know what's going to happen to you, or you don't have confidence in what's going to happen to you, or you're just hoping that this or that will happen, but you don't know, what a horrible place to be. If I could encourage you to get into Christian Scripture, or learn about these things, or continue to listen to the Today Counts podcast, maybe we can be of help to you in that. But the more you think about God and his promises, the interesting how our problems begin to shrink, how they begin to shrink. So here's what he said so far. Trust in the Lord, so it's action, and we give to him everything, right? And we get out of our own head and we start thinking about how big he is. And when we do that, it makes what we're going through much smaller and smaller and smaller. And then he's not done yet. It says, and he will guide you on the right paths. That God will quicken your thinking. He'll give you what you need to make good decisions and get you back on the road to health. Let me suggest 3 questions that I find helpful. I find them helpful for me. I find them helpful for those that I work with. And I think that asking these questions, I'm going to ask 3 questions. And as I am asking those questions, I want you to ponder the answers to those questions. And they're not easy questions. And so therefore, they're not easy answers. But if you will lean into these questions and into these answers, I think you will find renewal. I think you will find a rejuvenation. I think you will find purpose. You will find direction, at least to, get us out of a rut, or to get us out of the quicksand, or to get us out of the darkness, whatever metaphor you relate to. Here's the first question. And again, I think these require at least an hour, where you just got to, sit down or walk. I think you need to sit down, to be frank, or maybe a combination of walking and sitting down, or maybe you have your phone, you can open up your notes and you could type, some of the thoughts that come to you that will help you. But the first question is this: what are the things that I'm doing in my life today, whether it be in my leadership, whether it be in my relationships, whether it be in taking care of myself? What are the things that I'm doing today that are really, really important that I continue to do. And so I need to protect those things. I need to put them on the calendar. My calendar needs to protect those things. My close relationships need to understand those and help guard those and support those. And what would those things be? Because the things that you know that are life-giving to you, that are helpful to you, those are the things that you need to embrace. And don't let those go. Protect those. So take some time, ask yourself that question. What am I doing right? What am I doing well? What is good for me that I like doing, that I have been doing? And doggone it, I got to protect those things and make sure that I continue to do them. You know, for me, it's a weekly date with my wife. And we've been married for 43 years. But having a weekly date is a non-negotiable. And it's hard to be creative every week versus doing the same thing over and over again. But the most important thing is that we are spending time. You know, obviously, I've mentioned one of them. I need to be in Scripture. I need to be in Scripture because, you know what? I don't have my act together, and I need Scripture to build me up, to strengthen me. I also, as I get older, I know that I have to do strength training. I don't do it like I did in high school. I have to do it differently, but I do need strength training. I need to read and to study. I need to get good rest. You know, these are some of the things that I need to do. I need to be scheduled out 2 and 3 weeks in what I do. I cannot do this week to week and certainly day to day planning. It doesn't work for me. I've got to be out clearly out 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 weeks is great. So those are just some of the examples. Now, if I were to pull up my core values, you know, one of them has to do with my relationships with others. So there's some underlying things like forgive quickly. You know, that's something I got to keep doing. Forgive quickly and deeply and honestly, right? And do those things. Be sure that I don't become somebody who gets bitter instead of constantly getting better. And, you know, we can go on and on and on and on and on as examples. So that's the first question. The second question is, what are the things that I need to stop doing? Now, what might surprise you about this particular question is that obviously, if you're doing bad things to yourself, you need to stop it, right? If you've got some bad addictions that you need to take on, then get help. Don't try to do it yourself. Get help and get out of those addictions, right? Or maybe you're a workaholic, or maybe you fly off the handle at home. Your temper has gotten out of control. I mean, let's just be frank. Maybe you're lying and cheating and stealing. You know, I don't know, you know, what it is. Are you ready for this? Maybe what you're doing is you're confusing good with best. Maybe what you're doing is you're saying yes to everything. And you can't do that. In other words, you might have to stop doing some good stuff. There might be a lot of good things. You say, well, that's so good. And it's good to do that. And it's good to do that. It's good to do that. Yeah, but a lot of good will drown you in good. And it will all of a sudden become bad. It'll become bad. So the question is, what are the things that you need to stop doing? And I would bet on most people's list, there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 good things that you're going to need to drop out of your life so that you have the margin that you need to do those most important things in a way that bring you more life. Bring you more life. All right. So we got 2 questions so far. What are the things that I'm doing well and doing good that I need to protect and continue to do good? The second one is, what are the things I need to stop doing? Some of those are obvious and some of those are not so obvious. And it's going to take courage and it's going to take discipline. And you've got to do those first 2 questions before you can ask and answer the third, because asking and answering the third requires more room. And that's going to stress you out. If you haven't created more room through the first 2 questions, and then when I say the third question is, what do you need to start doing? What do you need to start doing that you're not doing? Now you're just going to go over the deep end. You're going to drive over the cliff. You're going to drown yourself. You know, you're just going to say, oh, it's too much. And I just want to say, it's always about doing. It's always about doing so that you can be. Some people say you got to be before you can do. I would say, you know what? I think you got to do some stuff in order to be. So if you want to be, you're going to have to set time and margin aside so that you can pursue the kind of person that you want to be. If you want to be physically stronger, then you do have to work out. If you want to have more peace in your life, then you do need to have some time for prayer. If you want more understanding of faith, then you do need to make a commitment to read scripture or to be under someone's teaching. What are those things that you need to start doing? But I never want to ask you that question until you've done the hard work at saying, what are the things I'm already doing that I cannot let go of, I must not let go of? And the second one is, what are the things I need to stop doing? That's going to be a list of harmful, hurtful things, but it's also going to be a list of things of good intentions and good deeds and good things that just don't fit in your life right now, because you need to make room for the answer to the third question. What do you need to start doing? So if you want to know how to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, and acknowledge him in all your ways so that he will direct your paths, these are the questions that you and the Lord need to ask together. That's what it means to trust, to lean in and say, how would you lead me in these three questions? How should I be living my life in this way? Now, remember this. If you're a leader, and that is my target audience, ministering and helping, equipping, supporting leaders, because you guys are in a fight day in and day out, because true leadership is about serving others. It's about helping others. It's about equipping others. It's about helping people deal with their stuff. It's about helping them be good performers. It's about helping them see what the organization is trying to accomplish. It's all of those things, and it takes a lot out of you, the leader. So as the leader, it is so important to be someone who is self-aware. Know where you're at. With all those things I talked about on the front end of this podcast, all those very unbecoming things that can be true for all of us, the first stage, the first phase, the first thing the perennial idea that you want to come back to over and over again is, how aware am I of my health? How aware am I of my faith? How aware am I? And then as I become aware through these three questions, then I begin leading myself as I believe God has directed me, as I've acknowledged that I need his help in the answering of those questions, and then the acting upon the answers to those questions. And then and only then can I lead others in a morally and responsible way. Let me put it in the negative. If I'm a wreck and I'm not leading myself well, how in the world can I lead others in a moral and responsible way? So I know that it is my goal to always be a help to you, to be an encouragement to you, to be present, to be fully present with you. And I know that is your goal as well, as you live and commune with your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, the folks at work, people in your neighborhood, people in your faith community, wherever that is. So, scripture, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths to health. He'll help you get out of the situation that you're in. God bless you, and thanks for joining us today. If you're not part of the Lead Today community, let me invite you. Go to leadtodaycommunity.com. That's leadtodaycommunity.com and sign up for Monday Moments. It's a weekly email that will encourage your leadership. Again, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for telling a friend about the Today Counts show.